The universe is calling, calling, calling. The universe is calling me to be. The universe is calling, calling, calling. The universe is calling.
Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Kansas City jazz singer, songwriter, flautist, and motivational speaker Bukeka Blakemore. She opened up with Neon Jazz about a great many things going on in her very busy life. She was born with the name Gretchen Elizabeth, and at 6, she chose the name Bukeka. It means adorned one in a language spoken in South Africa. In 2000, she released her first CD, self-titled, and then in 2016, she released an EP entitled Just Like the Phoenix. There is another one in the works, an expanded edition of the Phoenix in 2019. She is always spreading the message of hopefulness and optimism via her words and her music. So get to know her and dig this interview, my friends.
First of all, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can't even tell you.
I love it. I love it. So let's start off here with the ever-present, and I want to know if you have any projects on the horizon, any CDs or music in the works.
I completed about 6 months ago an EP, or I launched an EP, and I'm working on finishing that to a full-fledged album. And I'm also working on having one of the songs reproduced in a more epic way called Just Like the Phoenix, and it really has a lot of potential, but it really needs the choir and, big drums and, timpani, all of that. So I'm working on getting the resources together for a much larger production of what is currently on the recording.
Let's go back to the beginning of your life. Were you born and raised here in Kansas City?
Actually, I was born in Pontiac, Michigan, really during the height of Motown. It was a wonderful time to be in that area. And so there was lots of exciting, buzz going on with, the Temptations and Diana Ross and Mary Wells and just, all kinds of people that you just would see, some of the writers, Johnny Bristol, they were, part of my parents' network of friends. And so it was a great time to be in the Detroit area. Pontiac is probably about 25 minutes north of the Detroit area.
Well, that's interesting because I always think about Detroit being akin to Kansas City being kind of a cradle of music, and there was so much going on,
Yes.
When did you come to Kansas City? I
came to Kansas City in 1981. I've been here for a long time, and
nice.
The reason why I am here is both my parents originally came from the state of Kansas. My father from Wichita, my mother from Atchison, both music educators, both jazz backgrounds and classical, but jazz as well. And so when I wanted to find a place to study music, I decided to come to UMKC, and my mother was telling me, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much fun. There's all these jazz clubs that are going to be there. And of course, at that time, in 1981, 82, that was not the case. We've really grown and expanded and redeveloped that, that beautiful era of Kansas City, the way that it was probably when my mother did frequent here when she was a young adult. It took some time to get some traction for me as a vocalist in the jazz world in Kansas City.
Talk to me a little bit about your given name is Gretchen Elizabeth. You're talking about your parents, and they were they allowed you to change your name. Talk to me about that name change and what that meant for you at that point in your life.
Well, yes, both my parents were very active in civil rights. My mom actually wrote a lot of civil rights children's songs. So she wrote songs about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Sojourner Truth. And as a music educator, she created these children's songs that were absolutely amazing. And my father was the head of the civil rights offices in Detroit and in Battle Creek, Michigan. So we were always having meetings at our house, and we had people from all, parts of the world, and I was little Gretchen. I'd walk around and they'd say, "Where's little Gretchen?" And I just remember people having all these phenomenal names. Then by the time I was 6, I was like, I'd rather have an African name. and they were gracious enough to allow that to happen. So I went from Gretchen Elizabeth to Bukeka Blakemore. The reason why I loved the name Bukeka is because it had in the description that many princesses were named after this. And, you know, I'm 6 years old. I got a pink bedroom. I got a canopy. I'm like, this is the name for me. And then Blakemore means born on Sunday. So we had that actually added to my birth certificate. But I've been Bukeka Blakemore ever since I was 6 or 7 years old.
So at this point now, you're a singer, songwriter, flautist, a motivational speaker. So when you were growing up, what did you want to be? What was your dream to be what you are now, or did you have other aspirations?
I was just asked that question earlier today. I really believed and would vision myself as a singer, songwriter, vocalist on stage. Then perhaps when I got closer to graduating from high school, I thought, well, maybe I should become a communications major. Maybe I should major in journalism and become an anchor, of a news program. Something that seemed a little bit more stable than being a musician. And of course, I always had my parents in my ear because they were concerned about me wanting to do it in a performance fashion rather than an education fashion. But obviously I chose the performance route.
Well, and speaking of, your first CD was released in 2000. It was self-titled, and it had the track, Light a Candle in Your Name. Talk to me about kind of that dream realized of getting your first album out and just kind of hitting the streets with it.
It was incredible because I had written music with a band, a funk R&B band in the mid 80s. And the songs were very much in that, lyrically of that genre, which is, I can't live without you, and, baby, you're all I need. And that was an extension of, everything that you would hear, from Motown and everything. That was kind of the lyrically the way that R&B went. Then we had a change in the music industry, particularly with black music. There was much more, R&B bands took a back seat, and up came rap. And I have an appreciation for all forms of music and artistic talent, including, hip hop. But at that time, a lot of it was pushing R&B, out of the way, and I couldn't find myself. I could not find where I was supposed to be. And so for 5 years, I didn't write anything. But I began to become very spiritually inspired, was, dealing with my worthiness in the world. And from that, I started to write songs about that and positive, personal, reaffirming lyrics to music. When that happened, I had a wonderful friend who you may know. His name is Rick Backus. Rick heard what I was doing and took a strong interest and produced my first CD. And it was an incredible moment for me to, it was my first recording, and to just hearing it back at me, these messages that ultimately ended up doing so much for so many people were also for me as well. And so I was touched, very grateful, always grateful for Rick Backus for taking that leap of faith with me, and that really just launched everything.
So it seems like you've had kind of a 5-year plus path to releasing successive projects in your life. What do you view each of these projects, CDs that you've put out? Are they an evolution of you? Are they where you're at the time? How does that look? How do you see that as a timeline progression of you as an artist?
A couple of things. Because of the types of songs they took a life of their own, I was able to become well known in lots of inspirational circles. And so I traveled with that first CD. Also found that it was a platform for me to expand on those messages. So one of the songs, like you said, I'll Light a Candle in Your Name, was one about friendship and remembering special, people in your life. And there's a song on there called I Am Worthy of Love. And so it really gave me a platform to not just do the music, but to also be an inspirational speaker. As those events were on, as I'm on this journey, performing these songs and speaking about these experiences, it just led to more. The way that music comes to me, it's definitely life experience inspired, and I will hear a lyric in my head and all of the instrumentation that follows with it. I am fairly well versed on piano and flute, but that's about the extent of it, and I hear everything. The guitar, the bass, the drums, everything. So I have to rely on my music family to extract these things out of my head. So, yes, it is a very evolutionary type of experience, and I do rely on the inspiration of life to feed the lyrics and music that ultimately have inspired each album. Now, this most recent one, just like the Phoenix, the EP that will ultimately be a full-fledged album, I did want to work with with another songwriter, just so that I could have a different perspective or broaden my perspective. I met a woman by the name of T.L. Jones, a great songwriter. She can write in pretty much any genre you can think of, and so we collaborated on 3 songs. And one of them is the title track, which is Just Like the Phoenix, which is just, I think it has huge potential in film, licensing. I really do. And it tells a story of the lyric kind of goes, it goes, there's no mystery or myth as to how long I've been doing this, inspiring possibly in the millions those I may never see. And so when people hear that, it's their song. It's their song too. It's their same. So it's just like the Phoenix. I'm rising again. So it's a part of that evolutionary journey, and yet it also is timely.
So let me ask you this. You've been here since 1981 in Kansas City. You've seen a lot of things change, not only with jazz, but with the general music scene live in particular. What changes have you seen that has led up to right now in 2019 that makes this time in Kansas City one that is pretty special, especially for the jazz community?
I think one of the most phenomenal things is the designation of Kansas City being the city of music. UNESCO is the United Nations Education, Science, and Cultural Organizations. Anita Dixon, who has been a long-time jazz promoter and lover and supporter in Kansas City, 3 years ago set out to see about getting this designation, and she was successful. The other thing that she has also done is she has procured a designation by the Department of Labor so that being a musician is actually an apprenticeable profession, which it wasn't before. With the Department of Labor, that did not exist. So she's had a big role. I think the other thing that's happened, even though Power and Light does not have, its own kind of jazz persona, but because of the Power and Light district, there's just been a stronger appeal to people coming into the city as having an entertainment district. I think the jazz district is doing very well. When I first came here, not first came here, but as that was the jazz district was starting to kind of rebirth, it was kind of slow in coming. But now on the weekends, you go down there and there's hardly any room to park, which is fantastic. So I think there's just been a real desire on the part of the city through various changes in city administration to see Kansas City have a stronger role in or play a stronger part in the jazz community across in the world. And as of recently, with this UNESCO designation and now having some things on the horizon for teaching jazz as an indigenous form of music, I think it's going to be even more amazing.
The one thing that we learn so much from in our lives, we have education, you can be on stage, you can travel, but seeing live shows. So my question to you is this: what live jazz shows, probably more early on in your life, did you witness that really left a deep impression on you?
Sarah Vaughan.
Wow.
I saw her live. My mother took me to go see her, and I will never forget it. It was the most amazing sound I'd ever heard. And when she passed away, I think I felt it in my heart. It was amazing. Al Jarreau did a concert at a place in Michigan called Pine Knob. Fantastic. So I've had a chance to see some amazing jazz icons when I was younger, that, were left a very strong impression on me. But then again, there was also just my parents' albums. I was one of those kids that while they were at work, I got out of school at about 2:30, 3 o'clock. I'd come home and I'd pull them all out. I'd put out Dinah Washington and Ella Fitzgerald, and then also a lot of the instrumentalists of like Jan Ackerman and Jazz Crusaders, and I would just listen to it over and over and over again. So it's been a very big part of my life.
The one thing, and this next question has been hatched because I've spent a lot of time outside of the Blue Room on 18 and Vine. I look up at that sign, I think, man, if I could just snap my fingers and be here 60 years, 70 years prior, where would I go? Who would I see? My question to you is this. You get into a Jazz DeLorean and you go down, you pick a time period. Who are you going to see live in Kansas City off 18 and Vine?
Ooh, Billie Holiday. Would love to just walk in and see Billie Holiday. Obviously, Sarah Vaughan, all the, if I could just, if that were the case, I think Billie Holiday, I think I would just like faint. If I could walk in and see her standing there, that would have been amazing. Just to hear, Count Basie. I have a funny story. I have an aunt, kind of like a great aunt that used to come up to Kansas City from Atchison. She and my grandmother would hang out at the Mutual Musicians Foundation, and she said sometimes she'd get on the piano, and she would, later on in her life, she was like, Count Basie took my song.
Nice.
I know he took my song.
Yep, that's it. That is it.
Yeah.
So why do you love jazz?
I love it because it is a way of a very free form of musical expressions. It speaks to the soul, I think, of our country because it has so many roots, not only in various cultures, but of course, in African American culture. And so that, of course, as an African American woman, that means a lot to me. I think that it is something that is a treasure. Because it has stood the test of time in the music industry over lots of massive ways of producing instrumentation, and it's one that allows us to keep learning how to play music and how to sing and structure songs in a way that's not canned. So it has so many educational benefits, but it also has a lot of soulful expression that I think that people really love to tap into when they hear it on any type of instrument. It just goes very deep into the soul.
I agree. So my final question to you is this. Everyone has a version or a perception of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, your fans. But you know yourself best. So who do you think you are?
Well, I think I'm a woman who is resilient, and I know that I'm here for a reason, and despite life events that just happen because we're human beings, I find that no matter what's happening in the music industry, how much money you can make or how much money you just absolutely will not make or whatever it is, my soul, it's here to express in that way, and it just has to do it. And so, and I know many people, like that. I could say that about Lonnie McFadden. I can say that about, Ida Macbeth. Once it's there, it's who you are, and you just do it no matter what. I love my life. I love my family. I'm very thankful, so grateful for the gifts that I've been given, and I'm very happy to share it.
Beautiful. I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. Thank you for taking some time out to talk about your life in Kansas City, your life in music. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure and honor as well.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest singers in Kansas City and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Bukeka for her time, her music, and her words. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.